Hi and welcome to this episode of the Business Book Club. This week we're looking at James Kerr's legacy. The story, the incredible story of the All Blacks and how they, time after time, generation after generation, beat the odds. So, James, where has all of this fascination with high performance come from?
Well, great question. I've just always been interested in kind of what happens behind the scenes, what happens on the inside, and often the view from the outside is very different from the view on the inside. And so I've always just been really curious about, how great teams work, what the transferable principles across domains are. I work with sport, military, and business, and there's sort of some fundamental principles and truths, I think, underneath and commonalities. Between, the difference between the good and the great in each of these environments.
Yeah, and when we think about those three areas, business, military and sport, has one been more fruitful for you with lessons that are transferable?
Well, funnily enough, the military thing I think is really, is what's interesting me a lot at the moment, for a couple of reasons. One, they struggle or they deal every day with scale, which larger businesses do. So it's about finding that and transferring it to business. There's tremendous heritage for some of them. Say in the British Army, the regimental thing. There is a tremendous focus on leadership and good leadership. They're learning organisations. They're learning organisations, and they're also, the hardcore pacifists might laugh at this, but they're also very ethical organisations. If you've got a licence to kill, effectively, you've got to ask yourself some pretty serious questions.
Yeah. And one of those groups then mentioned in the book is US Navy SEALs, yes. And this book is now core reading for that group. Are you surprised by that?
I'm thrilled by it.
Yeah.
I think I'm not surprised in the sense that I think, again, it's about that commonality.
Yeah.
It's about, there's a huge amount of commonality between, say, the All Blacks and the SEALs. They have a lineage, they have symbols and language and ritual that is all their own. They're very purpose-driven organisations.
But it's a massive indicator, litmus test indicator of success of a book, that somebody such as US Navy SEALs, a really well-known, successful organisation, saying this is the key book and we want everybody joining our organisation to read it. So. Yeah. Did the level of interest in that surprise you or not?
Well, again, I think I was surprised. The victory for me was just getting the book finished, to be honest. All the rest is a bonus. Yeah. But I think some of the power in it is because there is a universal story in the book. It's not really a book about the All Blacks. I mean, it is. It uses the All Blacks as a case study. But what I wanted to bring with it is a lot of the work that I've done with larger organisations and other sports teams and other teams in different spheres. And I think there's some universal truths about some of those existential questions. Who are we and what are we doing here and what is our role and what are we contributing to? And that idea of legacy, being part of something bigger than ourselves, has a real resonance for human beings. It gives significance and it gives meaning.
Okay, and what are some of those core principles, some of those core lessons, some of the most transferable that businesses, large or small, could be inspired by and start to engender in their businesses immediately?
I think what great teams that have sustainable success, a lot of teams can spike very quickly and do really well, but they don't necessarily last. So I'm really interested in teams that can sustain their success. And I think there's a common kind of framework between all teams that last, and that is that they're values-based. They know what they stand for and they know what they don't. They're very clear on their foundations, if you like. They have a very clear and burning vision of what they want to become and where they want to go. And they've asked the most difficult question of all, which is, why does it matter?
What have you learned about organisations that are struggling, that are flailing, that perhaps have a challenge in resilience because things aren't going their way, because they're in the doldrums, whether those are external influences or otherwise? What have you learned about those difficult times?
Yeah, great question. I think often, esprit de corps can make up for, culture eats strategy for breakfast is the old saying, but a lot of the time that's seen as the soft option. It's not measurable. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to get funding for it. all of those sort of questions, which tends to be austerity CEO, if that makes sense, which we revert to just doing the basic, just doing the functional stuff. And in fact, an investment often in creating a culture and creating esprit de corps and a real sense of purpose, if you like, it's very difficult to measure, but it certainly creates resilience.
One of the powerful tools that's written in the book is the haka. Have you ever seen something that is like a haka in a corporate organisation, or some sort of physical embodiment within a corporate organisation that a team can use as?
Yeah, there are various examples. Not necessarily as visceral as a haka, but we're quite highly ritualised as a society without knowing it. A handshake is a ritual. Yeah. Gifts at Christmas is a ritual. All of these things are rituals. So rituals are really the repetitive behaviour that signifies something, in a sense. So I think Amazon has been great on one level with bringing some of those rituals alive. A very consumer-oriented company, customer-oriented company that never sees its customers. Yeah. So Jeff Bezos introduced the idea of a small minor ritual, if you like, of in certain meetings making sure there was a chair sitting there empty. So the customer was always in the room. Yeah. But sometimes it can just be small, unique, the way we do things around here. If you talk to sort of sociologists and anthropologists about what culture is, you can't see it. But you can see the manifestation of the culture, the output, and that tends to be language. Well, it tends to be sort of verbalized, symbolized, and ritualized. Language and stories and mantras and slogans or whatever. But the way we talk. Yeah. Symbols, what it looks like, and that's maybe our logo. Yeah. But it can also be dress codes or the visual side of it, and rituals. What are the things we regularly do? And
you had a really nice way of defining excellence. The phrase used was repetition to this increment. Basically incremental repetition, or just pushing yourself that little bit further and further.
Sean Fitzpatrick, former All Black captain, has a great phrase which is excellence is modest improvement consistently.
Yeah, sorry, that was it. Yeah, excellence is modest improvement consistently done. I love that.
Yeah, and the resonance of that is, if you look at just about every great team, that idea of the details that make the difference, that extra discretionary effort. Yeah.
When we think about organisations that are going through change, and my skin crawls even saying this, but it does feel like change is the only constant at the minute. What lessons can you recommend for those that are trying to become agents of change themselves, how to respond to the climactic change that obviously that there is going on globally at the minute and will continue, but also that are struggling to get change inside their business, inside their organisations? How do they catalyse little agents of change around their own?
Well, I think and this is coming back to the All Blacks as a case study, and something that that Wayne Smith has said, which is people will rise to a challenge if it's their challenge. Often the change gets delivered, the change process gets delivered as a PowerPoint that, guys, this is what we're going to do. And the natural reaction is, well, try me. It's like, well, I'll do the opposite then. Yeah. Human nature is sort of, if it wasn't my idea, it wasn't invented here, I'm out of here. So how do you create a conversation of inclusion? Now, whether that's telephone interviews, whether that's leadership by walking around, whether that's suggestion boxes, whether that's digitally accelerated, how do you get the voice? How do you get voices? How do people put their fingerprint on it? And certainly in terms, so the what might be defined in the boardroom, or by the consultants or whatever. It might go, this is how we're doing it. But often the how that it might happen is best entrusted to the people who are actually doing it. So ask them. And often those questions just don't get asked. Is leadership at every level? That really leaders create other leaders.
Fantastic. Well, we hope you come back and see us when the next book or two are out. So, James, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. Pleasure. So, Legacy by James Kerr. 10,000 people watching the Business Book Club now. We'd like to have your comments. So, comment, share, rate and subscribe, and you may win a copy. And we'll see you next time.
Or buy it at a bookshop near you.
Buy it in triplicate. And we'll see you on the next Business Book Club.